Welcome back, everyone. Actor Alec Baldwin has returned to the Rust set after New Mexico prosecutors formally dropped the charges against him on Thursday. As a reminder, Baldwin was facing one charge of involuntary manslaughter connected to the death of cinematographer Helena Hutchins, who was allegedly shot and killed on set by Alec Baldwin in October of 2021. Baldwin had always said that he did not pull the trigger on the gun that fatally shot Hutchins, but an FBI forensic report concluded back in August that the weapon could not be fired without pulling the trigger. So what changed, aside from being a liberal Hollywood elitist? Well, the newly appointed special prosecutor in the case say they received new evidence that the prop gun that Baldwin was practicing with when the shooting happened had been modified without his knowledge. Therefore, these new facts demand further investigation and forensic analysis. Baldwin's attorney released this statement saying, quote, "We are pleased with the decision to dismiss the case against Alec Baldwin, and we encourage a proper investigation into the facts and circumstances of this tragic accident." Not even 24 hours after all of this, Baldwin was back on the new Rust set in Montana, where he was seen in costume and holding a gun for the first time in over a year and a half. Except he was holding the gun backwards. Now, I don't want to jump to conclusions. Maybe this was a part of the scene, but still not a good look. Number one rule of gun safety: always treat the gun as if it's loaded. I'd like to bring on criminal defense attorney Bob Bianchi to discuss this. Bob, thanks so much for being back with us today. It's great to see you.
Same here. Pleasure to be here.
So I know you've been following the Baldwin case very closely, and one of the latest updates revealed that prosecutors have formally dropped charges against him. What's going on here? Can you give us the rundown?
From a prosecutorial point of view, this case has been a disaster from the beginning. It's been mismanaged. It's been mishandled. There were so many red flags that, again, like I always say, it's not about the right. It's not about the left, the conservative, liberal. As a prosecutor, you're supposed to properly investigate a case, apply the law, and if you figure somebody committed a crime, then you do that. It took them forever to even get an expert prosecutors to even review the case. The FBI report was not really that satisfying because it did indicate that the gun could be fired without pulling the trigger, although ultimately they said in this case it would have to be pulled, but then the gun broke in the middle of their testing. And now we're finding out that the gun had been modified. So you have to look at this like amateur hour. How do you not know? And this isn't the party's fault. It's not the lawyer's fault. This is the investigator's fault, the prosecutor's fault. It just wasn't handled properly. And to give you a perfect example of how mismanaged this case is, they charged them with offenses that any straight out criminal defense lawyer or prosecutor would know they weren't able to prove. And one of those charges, they charged that was not even a law at the time that this existed. I mean, you can go back to your basic civics class and know the term ex post factos, which means you can't have a person charged with a crime that's created after the incident occurred. So there went one charge. Then the prosecutor got thrown off the case because there's a constitutional requirement, which exists everywhere. Everyone knows this, that you can't be in the legislative branch of government and in the executive branch of government, which prosecutors are, because there's a conflict of interest. I mean, did you not know that when you were investigating the case? So then they lost the prosecutor. Then now the new prosecutors come in and they drop a charge because, you know what, this is going to be a difficult case to prove for prosecutors. And the bottom line is it's so messed up that I can't imagine they could get 12 juries to convict somebody beyond a reasonable doubt based upon this level of malfeasance.
Yeah, it truly is astounding, and it'll certainly be interesting to see how it shapes up. Now, in other news, we all know Don Lemon and Tucker Carlson were each let go from their hosting jobs almost at the same time, but reports show they were both still under contract. Now, the two have secured the same lawyer for their upcoming legal battles. Do you think we're looking at some pretty big settlements here? What are your thoughts?
No, I don't. I think, look, if you have a contract, all that the business has to do, I mean, it is the United States of America, and I love this case because it's both a liberal side and a conservative side. And usually there's escape clauses in contracts that say that if your demeanor or your behavior, in fact, a company has an obligation if your demeanor and behavior is not right to remove you from that scenario. Now, there's different reasons that we believe, we don't know all the facts, that we believe each one got fired. And I'm sure that the attorneys for Fox and the attorneys for CNN went over those contracts very diligently and made sure that whatever the conduct was that caused each of those media outlets, again, on polar opposites of the political sides, make those decisions that they were done according to what the contract says would be a violation of the contract and a removal pursuant to how the contract says you can be removed. So it really depends on the facts, which we don't know. But keep in mind, for Don Lemon and Tucker Carlson, you want to file a lawsuit. It's just like in other lawsuits that are filed that we've seen of recent vintage, you're subject to interrogatories, sworn depositions, and a lot of sometimes unflattering conduct that may come out against you. So I can't imagine the lawyers made a mistake in how they went about this on either side. If they did, then a lawyer can get involved and say, you know what, you violated the contractual provisions, then there's a case. We'll have to wait and see.
We will indeed. Regarding Tucker, there's now a woman who's coming forward saying that Tucker created a hostile work environment. Let's take a listen to what she has to say, and we'll come right back.
Tucker, it was different. And as a text that came out revealed my suspicions, he was looking for ratings bait, purely, and was also looking for power. It was a combination of ratings and power and manipulating the audience and manipulating also the political system. There was an aspect of, I can pick who the House Speaker is. I can pick who the President of the United States is, or who the Republican candidate's going to be. And I thought that was really dangerous and didn't want that kind of power. I didn't want to have Senate candidates calling me and being very upset, are you going to destroy our whole campaign tonight? Because he could do that. And he would call and tell them that if you don't participate or you don't come on the show, we will destroy you. And I was told to tell that to congressmen sometimes, and I didn't. How can I? That was disrespectful.
So there's some contradicting accounts surfacing which say this Abby Grossberg never personally met with Tucker. What do you make of the whole hostile work environment accusations that are coming out now?
No, again, we just don't know the facts. I mean, like you just mentioned, maybe she met him, maybe she didn't. But, I think Fox is going to have a considerable amount of cover with respect to this, because they just paid over $700 million in a lawsuit that was filed against them by Dominion. And with text, again, this gets to the point I was just mentioning before. This is what happens when you're involved in a lawsuit. It unearthed a lot of text messages and emails that were extremely unflattering, led people to the conclusion that lies were being told to them on the network, but probably worse, that they were attacking other colleagues and wanting one even fired for fact-checking information that later turned out to be accurate. So I think Fox, you got that piece. Then you have this piece where there's this lawsuit. And again, Fox has a responsibility. It has not had an uncheckered history with regard to sexual harassment complaints. They have compliance officers that are there, and they may very well be doing, and I don't know what the facts are, but they very well may be doing, hey, listen, we believe that these things cross the line with regard to the quote unquote misogyny or hostile work environment. And now the company has an obligation to not have its employees, just like your company, just like the company I work for, subjected to that environment. So there's a lot of firepower, I think, for the executives at Fox News to justify this decision, independent of even this woman's assessment, whatever the facts turn out to be with regard to that.
Yeah, very interesting. Now, last story I would like to get your insight on. A school district in Michigan is facing a lawsuit after forcing students to remove "Let's Go Brandon" sweatshirts. Can they actually do this? Is this freedom of expression? What do you think?
Yeah, these are difficult cases, but the Supreme Court's pretty clear about this. It's not the first time it's happened, all the way back from the protests in the 60s. And you have two contrary principles that are occurring here. Typically, people have to understand this issue. First Amendment protections are not as strong inside of a school setting and especially in the undergrades, high school, middle school, and grammar school, as they are if you're an adult out on the street trying to express your opinion. The school has a right to maintain a safe, healthy, and educational environment. So the courts have allowed some limitations on what otherwise would be protected speech. And I wrote down basically the areas that you can't do. For example, speech that disrupts, is lewd, illegal, creates disorder. Now, there is a part where it says offensive and indecent. I think they're going to have a problem here, and I'll tell you why. From the facts that I'm learning right now, you may not like the message, "Let's go, Brandon," but that's a violation of the First Amendment because they let other students have messages for gay and trans, from what I understand, shirts and things of that nature. So that is exactly where you fall into a constitutional problem when you're basically saying, I don't like the expression of this people, so I'm not going to allow it, but the expression of politics with these people is okay. So I think in this particular case, if the facts are that they didn't just like the message, that's a big problem.
It is indeed. Well, Bob, thank you so much for your insight today. It was great chatting with you. Let people know where they can follow you for more.
Thank you. You can follow me at @RBianchiESQ on Twitter and Instagram, and it's great being on with you. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Take care.